Hi.
You've brought out some little characters here from the box trolls. Are these, and we'll explain for the radio audience, we've got the bad guy from the movie. What's his name?
Snatcher, Archibald Snatcher.
You know, with a name like Archibald Snatcher, you figure he's going to be the bad guy from the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And then we have the kid who's the sort of hero.
Yeah, eggs, as his box says.
And then we've got another little box troll here on stage.
Oil can.
And I'm looking at these figures. The tallest one, the bad guy, Archibald, is like maybe 15 inches tall or something like that. Are these things that are used in a movie, or are these just reminders for you of what the characters look like so you don't mess it up?
These are the stars of the show. So all of these are stop motion puppets. So the animators, we have a crew of animators, and you'll see here, these puppets are articulated.
So you're moving the arms of the bad guy and just stopping them in different positions, and this is how you made this movie?
This is the hard way of how we made this movie.
That seems like the incredibly hard way. Just, let's actually start at the beginning here. How do you get into puppet work or puppeteering? Because when you're single and you say that to somebody in a bar, you're probably not going to have a second date with them.
Oh, it works.
I'm a puppeteer.
It works every time. No, I'm a puppet maker.
A puppet maker.
What kind of puppets? Stop motion. They're like,
how did you get into this?
I got into it by being a dysfunctional sort of, I suppose, dysfunctional academic. I was an academic. I was good at art. My mum, when I was a little kid, poured a big pile of fabrics in the middle of the floor and said, "You're never going to be bored, make something." So I started making things, and then my dad was like, "Oh my God, she's covered the whole house with fabrics," and rued the day my mum ever said that. And then I went to school, and they tried to sort of tie me down into a routine and mathematics and English, and really the artwork in the back of my books was far better than any of my text or math. So I sort of somehow got into the arts world, and then I really couldn't decide what I was going to do. I liked painting, I liked making clothes, I might like sculpting. But I collected old dolls. I collected sort of Victorian dolls. So I told my 1960s hippie art lecturers that I was going to make dolls. And they were horrified. They were like, "No, you can't make dolls, they're twee. No, 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 you've got to go and think about what you're going to do with your creative, artistic life." So that night I went home and I was like, wow, okay, I've been told I can't do what I want to do. All right, how do I get around this? Maybe puppets. Puppets are sort of an artistic form of doll making. I knew nothing about this industry, and that was it. That was my course. I
think that most people, when they hear puppets, they immediately think hand up the undercarriage,
the backside, and they were the first puppets that I made.
Those were the kinds of puppets you made? Because the kind that you use for a movie like Box Trolls that I'm looking at right now, they're not, you don't put your hand in them, they don't have strings attached, they're just very posable. What was the first puppet you actually made?
The first puppet I actually made was an
Is there a special puppet term for that? Like if I was going to make a puppet, it was going to be the butthole kind.
I was supposed to be a string.
I assume it's not that, right?
I knew them as Henson-style puppets.
Henson-style puppets. That's his legacy.
Henson up the... And it was one that I operated the mouth with my hand, and, I had rods on the hand.
What was it?
It was a strange creature. I made it out of chamois leather and clip foam, and it had ping pong balls for eyes, which I painted. It's amazing what you do at art college.
And with drugs. What was its name?
It didn't really have a name. It was sort of a character that came out of the ground in some weird time machine that was surrounded by stone circles. It was very hippie.
So then did you do a voice for it? I mean, have you ever done puppets where you're being the voice of the puppet? And by the way, I'm available for your next movie if you need it, because that was, I think we can all agree, pretty amazing.
I have never made one of those puppets, no.
And you've never done the voices?
I've never done the voices, no.
So then how do you end up working for Leica and sort of recognized as the puppet queen. Like, how did you become so accomplished in this field? What is it about the puppets you're making?
So I got into stop motion puppet making because I went to college in Manchester, and there was a studio down the road called Cosgrove Hall that made Wind in the Willows. It went on to make Noddy, a lot of kids' TV shows, and they introduced me to stop motion puppet making, which I knew nothing about until I went there. And I sort of got an apprenticeship there. And then they created a smaller company, the puppet team did, and we got this sort of infamous phone call one year, and it was Tim Burton's office in New York. We're working on this movie, it's called Mars Attacks. We want it to be homage to the old 50s stop motion live action films. And that was the sort of the big break that we had in Hollywood. We were this little company in Manchester, England, and that sort of put us on the map. That eventually went to computer animation, but we made 65 puppets, of which I made about 60 of them, the internal skeletons. Yeah.
I want to let people know that you're listening to Livewire Radio. We're talking to Georgina Hayns. She's with the company Leica. They have made a number of films, and we've just been throwing the term stop action puppetry around, but I guess in case somebody doesn't know, this is what exactly when you say stop action?
Well, stop motion, stop action, it's all the same. It is where a puppet is moved frame by frame. 24 frames make 1 second of film. So on a good week, an animator will get 1 to 2 good seconds of animation.
What's the suicide rate?
It's really low.
Well, because I don't think I'm spoiling anything. At the very end of the Box Trolls, there is a moment which I feel like your union must have pushed for, where we see superimposed, it's sort of after the credits or kind of towards the end of the credits, one of the puppeteers actually doing the posing of making these characters move. And it is mind-bending how much time it takes to just get even a second of this footage.
And you know, I could never be an animator. I'm a puppet maker, and even now I'm a supervisor of an amazing team of puppet makers at Leica. You know, we have 65 artists and craftspeople from all over Portland, all over Oregon. We bring them in from the East Coast, the West Coast, and strange people like me with an English accent, all over the world, people with miniature skills. So, yes, so as I say, I don't move the puppets, but we make them.
Why is it worth doing the hard way?
It's such a special kind of filmmaking. It's an age-old filmmaking technique. And I think the most amazing thing about seeing a stop-motion film, it's a little bit like looking through a Viewmaster. It's a real three-dimensional object, and it's in real space. And I think you can tell that. And the detail that my team, myself, puts into these puppets, you see it. You see it's projected on the big screen, and it's all real. It's tangible, it's real, and it's believable.
There's such an interesting sort of aesthetic to this film. The way that the characters are rendered just tells you, particularly, I watched this with my little nephew here in Portland, and this is a kid who hasn't been to the movies very often. In fact, he loves Star Wars, but he's never actually been allowed to see Star Wars, so he's made up a parallel Star Wars that exists, because he knows a thing called Star Wars exists. So this was the second movie he'd ever seen, and he was completely riveted. And part of it, to me, seemed to be the way these characters physically sort of appeared. Do you make a decision at the beginning of the film, like, that there's going to be I don't understand how you create a consistent look for everything, because they all seem random, but they kind of work together.
Yeah, so we have art direction. You know, when a film is, when a script is written, we get an initial team of people together who are the key creatives, and we all work together to decide what the look of that movie is going to be. And I'll go off to the puppet department and make sure that the puppets are consistent with that look. The department that makes all the faces, they will do the same. The art department that does all the sets and models that are in the movie, they're all getting their information from one central sort of pool, an art director, a production designer. So those decisions are made. We knew that Box Trolls was going to be set in this fantasy Dickensian world, so it was perfect for stop motion because it's detailed. Everything's about detail in that sort of time period.
Is this something that you think they'll ever be able to build a computer program that could do it seamlessly?
You know, no, because that's the problem with computer programs. The seamless computer program can never replicate an organic part. And maybe one day it will, but I think what's incredible about these handmade pieces and the reason people are drawn to it is the mistakes. They give them the character. You know, just like a human being, we're not symmetrical. Our puppets aren't symmetrical. So
Far from it. We're talking about
especially this guy.
Snatcher there.
Yeah.
Well, Georgina Hayns, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for coming on Livewire.
Thank you.